The morning air in Willow Creek Estates was always carefully manufactured. It smelled faintly of cut Kentucky bluegrass and commercial fertilizer, a neighborhood designed to look like a sanctuary but managed like a military base. I stood at the edge of my driveway, a half-empty mug of black coffee cooling in my hand, staring at the physical wreckage of my property line. My cedar fence, all 80 feet of it, was lying flat in the mud. The posts hadn't just been unbolted, they had been sheared off at the base by a skid steer. My name is Ethan Walker. For 15 years, I've managed municipal infrastructure contracts across 3 states. I've overseen highway expansions, heavy utility routing, and drainage grids that keep entire counties from washing away during flash floods. I bought this lot because it was built over a master easement I actually consulted on a decade ago. I thought I was buying peace. I thought after years of dealing with corrupt city councils and aggressive labor unions, a quiet cul-de-sac would be a retirement for my nerves. I was wrong. I had simply traded corporate bureaucracy for Karen Whitmore. Karen was the HOA president, a woman who treated the community bylaws like her personal constitution. She drove a pristine white Lexus SUV through the streets every morning at precisely 7 a.m., moving at 5 miles per hour, her eyes scanning lawns for rogue weeds or non-compliant trash cans. 2 days ago, she stopped outside my house, rolled down her window, and adjusted her sunglasses. "Ethan," she had said, her voice dripping with artificial neighborly warmth. "The board reviewed your fence. The stain is 3 shades darker than the approved desert sand palette. It reduces the visual continuity of the block. Our analysts estimate it impacts collective property values by roughly 0.8%. It's weather-sealed cedar, Karen," I replied calmly. "It's built to last 20 years without rotting into the water table. Rules are what keep this community from becoming a slum, Ethan," she smiled, a cold, practiced expression. "Compliance is non-negotiable." I thought it was just the usual HOA posturing until 24 hours later, when an official citation was taped to my front door. It wasn't a warning. It was an enforcement order claiming the structure violated Section 4B of the Aesthetic Compliance Standards. No county inspector had ever flagged my fence. It was fully permitted under municipal code. But in Willow Creek Estates, Karen considered her board to be the Supreme Court. Now, looking at the splintered wood, I heard the high-pitched beep of a diesel engine reversing. A commercial flatbed truck was parked at the curb, and 2 contractors in high-visibility vests were already tossing my cedar panels into the back. I walked down the driveway, my boots crunching on the gravel. "Who authorized this?" I asked, keeping my voice level, completely devoid of anger. In my line of work, losing your temper is the first step to losing a contract. The lead worker, a guy with a clipped beard and an uncomfortable look on his face, wiped his brow. "Look, man, we just got the work order from the management company. Signed by a Ms. Whitmore. Says it's an unauthorized structure on an HOA-controlled easement. We're just doing the haul away. Do you have the county-approved permit for structural demolition?" I asked. He pointed a gloved finger toward a handwritten directive clipped to his clipboard. "Just this, boss." I pulled out my phone, stepped back, and began taking high-resolution photos of the damage, the truck's license plate, and the work order. "Take what you want," I said softly. "But make sure you don't lose that clipboard." By mid-morning, the contractors had cleared the debris, leaving nothing behind but a jagged line of empty post holes and ruined turf. The physical barrier that separated my property from the open common area was gone, but as I stood there tracing the property line with a digital laser measure, I knew the legal boundary hadn't moved an inch. Lines on a property deed don't dissolve just because a bulldozer destroys the wood marking them. I walked back inside my home office, the air conditioning hum providing a steady backdrop to the anger I was systematically suppressing. I opened my heavy steel filing cabinet and pulled out the thick, leather-bound binder containing my original property purchase records from 2018. Most homeowners signed their closing paperwork without reading the fine print, trusting the title company to handle the details. But I don't trust systems I haven't audited myself. Buried on page 42 of the Master Development Agreement, beneath the standard clauses about roof shingles and commercial vehicle parking, was the golden thread, a subsurface utility easement, SUE. During the initial phase of Willow Creek Estates, the county had required the developer to grant a permanent, non-revocable infrastructure corridor directly across my lot to access a main regional stormwater bypass. The language was written in heavy, old-school legal prose, but its meaning was razor-sharp. No private entity, including subsequent homeowners associations or corporate developers, shall alter, enforce, or restrict structures within said corridor without explicit written consent from the County Zoning and Utility Commission. The HOA bylaws, the famous CC and RS that Karen used like a weapon, were subordinate to this deed. She believed she owned the surface. She didn't realize the county owned what lay beneath it. My laptop chimed. An alert from the neighborhood portal popped up. It was a new notification from the board, labeled Urgent Compliance Fine Notice. Account violation, Lot 14, Walker. Physical obstruction removed by executive order. An enforcement fee of $1,250 has been assessed to your account. Failure to remediate the landscape to original community standards within 48 hours will result in a daily compounding penalty of $150 and potential restriction of neighborhood access privileges. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Karen wasn't just trying to fix a fence color anymore. She was trying to establish a precedent of absolute submission. If I cracked, she would use the same tactic on every neighbor who dared to question her budget allocations or her choice of landscaping vendors. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't call the HOA office. Instead, I opened an encrypted PDF line and drafted a formal inquiry for jurisdictional clarification. I attached the certified 2018 survey maps, the technical engineering layouts of the storm drain, and the photos of Karen's contractors destroying the fence within the protected easement zone. I routed the email directly to Marcus Vance, a senior director at the county zoning board whom I had worked with on a highway bypass project 3 years ago. I hit send. Then I walked back to the window. Outside, an HOA golf cart was idling near my driveway. Karen was sitting in the passenger seat, taking notes on a digital tablet. She looked up, met my gaze through the glass, and offered a tight, victorious nod. She thought she had won the first round. She had no idea she had just stepped onto a legal minefield. The next morning, the heat in Willow Creek Estates arrived early, thick, and suffocating. At 9 a.m., the gravel road behind my property buzzed with the sound of a diesel engine. I walked to the edge of my back lawn and found a white pickup truck with the HOA logo on the door. 2 men were hammering wooden stakes into the ground. A bright orange nylon string stretched between them, cutting a full 5 feet into my grass line. "Morning, gentlemen," I said, leaning against my shovel. "Mind telling me what that string line represents?" The younger worker looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Just following the work orders, sir. We're marking the new boundary for the community common path. The HOA board updated the plot layout last night." "Who did the survey?" I asked, looking for the telltale brass caps of an official county surveyor. There were none. Only cheap wooden stakes. Ms. Whitmore handled the layout. The older one muttered, clearly not wanting any trouble. She said the previous markers were incorrect. Before I could answer, the familiar hum of an electric golf cart approached. Karen Whitmore coasted to a stop on the pavement, a digital clipboard resting on her lap. She didn't get out. She just looked at me over the rim of her designer sunglasses. "Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with bureaucratic authority, "I see you're supervising our improvements. The board approved the Greenbelt extension last night. Your lot was overextended into the community's shared space. We're simply reclaiming what belongs to the association." "Karen," I said, walking over to the cart. "Property boundaries are registered with the county recorder's office. An HOA board can't vote to change a legal deed layout during a Tuesday night meeting. We can when the original developer left the common area descriptions ambiguous," she shot back, her tone sharpening. "The CC and RS give the executive board unilateral power to interpret and adjust aesthetic and spatial boundaries for the harmony of the neighborhood. If you feel aggrieved, you're welcome to file an appeal at the annual meeting in 6 months. But until then, the stakes stay." "I see," I said, taking out my phone and snapping a photo of the stakes, making sure to capture her Lexus golf cart in the frame. "And what about the contractors you hired yesterday? Did they mention the utility easement?" Karen scoffed, a short, dismissive sound. "That old drainage pipe? The county hasn't inspected that system in a decade, Ethan. This is private property, managed by a private corporation. We are the law inside these gates. I suggest you get used to it." She tapped her accelerator and whined away down the asphalt. I watched her go, then looked down at the orange string. She was moving fast, trying to alter the physical landscape before I could mount a defense. She believed that because the county was slow, she was safe. What she didn't understand was that bureaucracy is like a glacier, slow to move, but it crushes everything in its path once it starts. By Thursday afternoon, the neighborhood felt like a hostile occupation. Karen had moved from stakes to signs. 2 large, metal notices now sat at the entrance of my side access road. Restricted zone, authorized HOA personnel only, compliance evaluation in progress. An Amazon delivery van slowed down at the corner, the driver looking at the sign, then at my driveway. He shook his head, shifted into reverse, and drove away. My packages were being marked as undeliverable due to restricted access. I grabbed my car keys, drove past the neighborhood security gates, and headed straight to the county planning and zoning building downtown. The limestone corridors smelled of old paper and ammonia. I bypassed the main customer counter and walked straight to the back offices, where Marcus Vance was reviewing an infrastructure blueprint. "Ethan," Marcus looked up, a faint smile breaking through his tired face. "I got your email. I had my team pull the master plat maps for Willow Creek Estates. You weren't kidding." He spun his dual monitor setup toward me. On the left was the official county registry map, showing my lot intact, backed by a wide, blue-shaded strip labeled High Priority Subsurface Stormwater Corridor. On the right was a printout of the digital newsletter Karen had emailed to the neighborhood an hour ago. On her map, the blue strip was gone, replaced by a green zone labeled Whitmore Common Walking Trail. "She's creating a parallel registry," Marcus said, tapping his pencil against the desk. "She's enforcing rules based on maps that don't legally exist outside her own hard drive. It's not just a violation of your deed. She's actively blocking a county-managed infrastructure asset. She thinks because it's a private subdivision, the county has no teeth," I said. "Well, she's about to find out we have a jaw full of steel," Marcus growled. "Look at this entry from 3 months ago. Your HOA board filed an internal amendment to their covenants, trying to grant themselves the right to modify surface structures over utility pathways. The county clerk rejected it automatically. They were explicitly notified that the easement was untouchable. Karen knew, Ethan. She ignored the rejection and pushed forward anyway. That was the missing link. This wasn't ignorance. It was willful intent. She was betting that no individual homeowner would spend $20,000 on a real estate lawyer to fight a fence dispute. She was using the legal system's high cost as a shield for her personal tyranny. "What's the next step, Marcus?" I asked. "Normally, a land dispute takes 90 days to clear through civil courts," Marcus said, leaning back in his leather chair. "But since you're the original engineer of record for that drainage grid, and since she's actively blocking access roads, we can bypass the civil court backlog. We're going to invoke the State Municipal Infrastructure Protection Act." He pulled up a fresh document on his screen and typed my case number into the header. "I need you to sign this formal declaration as the system architect. Once you sign, this stops being a neighbor quarrel. It becomes a state-level enforcement action against the HOA corporate entity." I took the digital pen and signed my name. The trap was set. The emergency HOA hearing was set for 7 p.m. at the community clubhouse. The room was packed with about 40 neighbors, whispering in low, anxious tones. Karen sat at the center of a long mahogany table, flanked by 4 other board members who looked like they were attending a tribunal. I walked in at precisely 7:01 p.m., carrying a single manila folder. I took a seat in the back row. "Thank you all for coming," Karen's voice boomed through the small PA system. "We are here to address a critical compliance issue regarding Lot 14. As you all know, architectural consistency is the bedrock of our property values. When individual homeowners choose to ignore the CC and RS, the entire community suffers." She clicked a remote, and a massive photo of my old cedar fence appeared on the projector screen. Mr. Walker was issued 3 separate warnings regarding the non-compliant material and dark stain of his structure. Karen continued, her tone dripping with righteous indignation. "He refused to comply. Therefore, under Section 9 of the bylaws, the board exercised its executive right to abate the violation. Furthermore, Due to Mr. Walker's continued hostility and unauthorized interference with community contractors, the board is voting tonight to issue a permanent restriction on his side road usage and assess a $5,000 fine for procedural obstruction. A murmur went through the crowd. Some neighbors looked at me with pity. Others, Karen's close friends, nodded in approval. Karen looked directly at me. Mr. Walker, you have 3 minutes to address the board before we cast the final vote. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. I didn't walk to the podium. I just stood where I was. I only need 1 minute, Karen. I have the official property records here from the county recorder. They show that the fence you destroyed sat entirely within a priority county easement corridor. The HOA has zero legal authority to alter or remove structures within that zone. Karen smiled, a tight, patronizing expression. Mr. Walker, we've already had our legal counsel review the Subdivision Act. The association maintains surface-level authority over all aesthetic elements within the gates. Your county maps mean nothing to our internal covenants. The county clerk rejected your amendment 3 months ago, Karen, I said, my voice echoing in the sudden silence of the room. You were explicitly told that the easement was exempt from HOA control. You kept that information from the rest of the board, didn't you? The board member sitting to Karen's left, an accountant named David, blinked and turned to look at her. What rejection? Karen, what is he talking about? It's an administrative irrelevance. Karen snapped, her face turning a sudden, sharp shade of pink. The vote is already scheduled. We are moving forward with the penalties. Go ahead and vote, I said quietly, sitting back down. But you might want to check your email first. Karen glared at me, her finger hovering over the projector remote. This meeting is not going to be hijacked by baseless accusations, Ethan. Board members, do I have a motion to approve the fines for Lot 14? Before David could answer, the heavy double doors at the back of the clubhouse swung open. 2 men walked in. They weren't wearing suits, and they weren't wearing HOA golf shirts. They were wearing dark blue windbreakers with the gold seal of the County Department of Environmental and Infrastructure Enforcement stamped across the back. The lead man, an enforcement officer named Henderson, carried a clipboard and a roll of heavy plastic tape. Which one of you is Karen Whitmore? Henderson's voice was loud, flat, and completely devoid of neighborhood politeness. The room went dead silent. Karen stood up, her jaw tightening. I am the president of this association. We are currently holding a private executive board meeting. You are disrupting our proceedings. Ms. Whitmore, Henderson said, walking straight down the center aisle, ignoring the staring neighbors. I'm Officer Henderson with County Infrastructure. I'm here to serve you with an official stop work order and notice of physical encroachment under State Code Section 44A. He dropped a heavy, multi-page document with a bright red government seal onto the mahogany table right in front of her digital tablet. What is this? Karen's voice cracked, her manufactured composure finally showing a seam. It means your authorization to modify, inspect, or enforce any rules within the western boundary of Lot 14 is officially suspended by the state, Henderson replied. We received an emergency engineering log showing that your contractors destroyed a permitted erosion control barrier and blocked a critical subsurface utility access road. That access road is used by the county to maintain the regional flood bypass. David, the board accountant, grabbed the paperwork and started flipping through the pages, his face turning pale. Karen, this says the HOA corporate entity is being cited for criminal trespass on public utility assets. The fine is compounding daily. It's a mistake, Karen said, her voice rising an octave as she looked around at the murmuring crowd. Ethan Walker engineered that system 10 years ago. He's using his old connections to harass this board. Mr. Walker is the engineer of record, Officer Henderson said coldly, and his technical logs are certified by the state. Your internal neighborhood rules do not override municipal flood infrastructure, Ms. Whitmore. If that side access road isn't cleared of your illegal restriction signs by 6 a.m. tomorrow, the county sheriff's department will remove them, and the cost will be billed directly to your personal assets. Henderson turned around and looked at the crowd. As of right now, this entire zone is under formal county investigation. Nobody touches that property line. I stood up, picked up my manila folder, and looked at Karen. Her hands were shaking as she tried to read the legal text on the document. The absolute authority she had wielded for 5 years had just been canceled by a piece of paper with a government stamp. Meeting adjourned, I whispered. Friday morning brought a different kind of traffic to Willow Creek Estates. The white Lexus golf cart was gone. In its place was a massive, yellow county vacuum truck and an engineering van parked squarely on the side access road. 3 county technicians were running ground-penetrating radar across my back lawn, mapping the exact dimensions of the subsurface drainage corridor. Every sign Karen had put up had been ripped out, lying face down in the dirt near the curb. I stood on my porch, watching the operation, when David walked up my driveway. He wasn't wearing his usual confident board attire. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 48 hours. "Ethan," he said, stopping at the bottom of the steps, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Can we talk? Man to man." "Sure, David. Come on up," I said, pointing to a wicker chair. He sat down with a heavy sigh. The board had an emergency executive session last night after the county left. No Karen, just the 4 of us and the association's corporate attorney. "Ethan, she completely lied to us. She told us our legal team had cleared the fence removal." Our attorney looked at the paperwork Henderson dropped off. "He says if the county pursues this encroachment charge, the HOA insurance policy won't cover it because it was an intentional violation of a known easement." "I know," I said, sipping my coffee. "I warned her on Tuesday. She wanted to make an example out of you," David muttered, shaking his head. "She thought if she could break the toughest guy in the neighborhood, nobody else would ever question the board spending. We have an annual budget of $400,000, Ethan. Karen's been routing all our landscaping and maintenance contracts through a shell company owned by her brother-in-law. She needed absolute control over the board to keep anyone from auditing those files." The picture was finally complete. The fence wasn't an aesthetic issue, it was a distraction. She wanted me tied up in an HOA legal battle, so I wouldn't look too closely at the infrastructure layouts and the inflated invoices for common area maintenance. "The county isn't going to let this go, David," I said softly. "The drainage bypass connects to a major reservoir. If your brother-in-law's dirt work blocks that line during the hurricane season next month, the entire lower block of this subdivision will be under 2 feet of water." "What do we do?" David asked, his voice desperate. "The county is threatening a $20,000 corporate assessment. If that hits, every homeowner here is going to see their monthly dues triple. They'll string us up from the lampposts. You need to cut the dead weight," I told him. "And you need to do it before the county inspector signs the final violation report on Monday morning." By Saturday afternoon, the cracks in Karen's empire had turned into a full collapse. Marcus Vance had sent a team from the County Forensic Audit Division to join the infrastructure inspectors at the clubhouse. Because the HOA had used community funds to finance an illegal demolition on a public easement, the county now had the legal authority to subpoena the association's financial bank records. I walked down to the community clubhouse around 3 p.m. to deliver my final engineering schematics to Marcus's team. The main room looked like a war zone. Binders were stacked on every table, and 2 county auditors were systematically going through a mountain of paper invoices. Karen was there, sitting in a chair by the window, flanked by a personal defense attorney. She looked smaller now, her expensive clothes wrinkled, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. The white digital tablet she always used like a scepter sat dark on the table. "Mr. Walker," her attorney said, standing up as I walked in. "Can we speak for a moment regarding a potential settlement agreement?" "I'm not a party to the lawsuit, counselor," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "The county is the plaintiff. I'm just the witness providing the technical data." "We know that," the lawyer whispered, moving me toward the hallway. "But my client is willing to personally fund the complete restoration of your fence. Premium cedar, custom stain, whatever you want. If you sign an affidavit stating that the initial drainage system configuration left the easement boundaries unclear, it would significantly reduce her personal liability in the criminal encroachment file." Before I could answer, the door to the inner office opened, and Marcus Vance stepped out, holding a yellow legal pad covered in red marks. "Save your breath, counselor," Marcus said, his voice echoing through the clubhouse. "We just finished matching the HOA line item expenditures with the state corporate registry. Ms. Whitmore, We've flagged $84,000 in emergency drainage maintenance fees paid out over the last 24 hours to a company called Apex Earthworks. Apex is registered to your brother-in-law, and their business license was suspended 2 years ago. Karen stood up, her chair screeching against the tile floor. That was legitimate emergency work to protect the common areas from Mr. Walker's non-compliant drainage layouts. The layouts are certified by the state. Karen, Marcus said coldly. Your brother-in-law's company didn't move any dirt. They just moved money. You used the fence dispute as a legal smokescreen to cover up a major fraud before our scheduled 3-year infrastructure audit. You didn't realize Ethan was the guy who drew the original maps. Karen looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of rage and terror. She had spent years treating the neighborhood like her personal kingdom, using minor rules to break people's spirits. She had mistaken my silence for weakness, never realizing that I was just letting her build the very gallows she was now standing on. Monday morning arrived with a clear blue sky and a profound silence in Willow Creek Estates. The white Lexus SUV was parked in Karen's driveway, but a large, red sticker from the County Sheriff's Civil Division was slapped across the driver's side window, a corporate asset freeze notice. At 10 a.m., a flatbed truck from a premium fencing company pulled up outside my house. 6 workers stepped out, led by David, who was now wearing a badge that read HOA Interim President. Morning, Ethan, David said, offering a firm handshake. We brought the good stuff. 5-inch thick, pre-treated Western red cedar. And we brought the exact oil stain you specified in your original layout. Appreciate it, David, I smiled. How did the board vote go last night? Unanimous, David said, leaning against his truck. Karen was officially stripped of her position and expelled from the board at 8 p.m. The corporate attorney presented the evidence of the shell company payments, and she signed an agreement to resign immediately to avoid an immediate indictment. She's currently selling her house to pay back the $84,000 she embezzled, plus the $15,000 county code fine. And her brother-in-law? I asked, watching the workers start digging the new post holes with a hydraulic auger. His equipment was seized by the county this morning, David chuckled. The association's insurance is paying for your entire rebuild, and we've officially amended the community bylaws. Section 4B is gone. From now on, the county plat maps are the final word in this neighborhood. No more personal interpretations. By late afternoon, the sound of hammering stopped. I walked down my driveway to inspect the finished work. The new fence stood tall and straight, the rich, dark cedar grain glowing in the golden hour light. It was beautiful, solid, and built to code. More importantly, it sat perfectly along the line where the public easement met my private sanctuary. I walked the length of the property one last time, my boots pressing into the freshly laid sod. The orange strings were gone. The illegal signs were gone. The parallel reality Karen had tried to manufacture through bullying and fake paperwork had been completely erased, replaced by the unyielding structure of the law. I stood at the corner post and looked across the quiet streets of Willow Creek Estates. Neighbors were out walking their dogs, waving to each other, the heavy air of suspicion and fear completely lifted from the block. Karen Whitmore had believed authority was something you could claim through noise, repetition, and bureaucratic pressure. She didn't understand that true authority is silent. It lives in the deep layers of the system, in the blueprints, the deeds, and the concrete pipes buried under the grass. I took a final sip of my coffee, turned my back to the road, and walked inside my house. The war was over. The structure had reached equilibrium. And for the first time in months, the neighborhood was completely, beautifully peaceful.